I didn't know who Ralph Hoderi was really. It was 1974. But I looked at his work and I looked at films about art, and they just seemed incredibly boring and pretentious. And one of the things that really struck me was as a medium on a medium, it didn't really work. I mean, there was no way you could take a huge mural like the one that was the documentary is based around, the one the Founders Theatre in Wellington, and resolve it properly on a frame about that big, which was a 16mm frame. I mean, you just can't. So I never really did a shot of a painting. I decided that I would only see the paintings through somebody else's eyes, and so I always put someone else in front of the painting. I think almost anybody who knows Ralph just winds up falling in love with him, because he's like, he's the most exquisite, magical, divine human being. He's wise, he's witty, he's generous. I absolutely adore him with all my heart. He said to me, "Oh, you can make a documentary about me, but don't expect me to say anything." And I thought, well, that's good. He can be this enigmatic, core, and all these other people can talk about trying to figure out what the hell he's on about. And there's this wonderful script by Ian Mune and Jeff Murphy, who are both brilliant. You had Jeff doing his first movie, but an incredibly knowledgeable, experienced filmmaker, incredibly talented man, and an absolute joy to be around at that time anyway, and so much fun. I mean, just doing anything with Jeff was just a ball, it didn't matter what you were doing. It was one of the hardest filmmaking experiences of my life. I mean, we made it for $300,000 in the middle of winter from Kaitaia to Bluff, and let me tell you, standing on the road all day, every day in the winter in New Zealand is not, I mean, it took me about 2 months to get my body warm again after that. And like the conditions that we worked under were just hysterical. I remember at one point my wife was the caterer, I was first AD, Don Reynolds was the sound engineer, and his wife was the makeup artist, and we were in a motel in a room with 2 single beds, and me and my wife in one bed and him and his wife in the other. And you wouldn't have a film crew working under those conditions in New Zealand nowadays, let me tell you, It was an invigorating film to work on. That's probably the best description of it in terms of energy and style and difficulty and so on. And I had never worked on a feature film before. What the hell I was doing as a first AD is beyond me, but I guess there wasn't anyone else except for Jeff who was any good at doing that kind of thing anyway. So it was a great learning experience. It's funny because it's a kind of a kid's film about necrophilia, so in some ways it's no mean feat, to pull something like that off. I remember we conned, a good deal of the production or sort of post-production costs of the movie out of the National Film Unit. I remember the general manager of the National Film Unit was shitting himself about what this thing was going to look like, because it was this government department that was making a film on this subject, and he saw a screening of the movie. He was immensely relieved. The producer, Rob Whitehouse, and I went and met him at the airport, and Rob introduced me, and I said, "Hi, John, I'm Sam, the director." And I said, "Listen, you must be tired. I'll come to your." We got him this lovely penthouse overlooking the ocean. So I'll come to your apartment in the morning. I'll make you breakfast, and we'll talk about the movie. So the next morning, I drove up and I made him a wonderful breakfast of fresh coffee, freshly squeezed orange juice, and a French omelette. No, it wasn't an omelette. It was baked eggs and Gruyere cheese and ham. And this guy ate like a pig. I mean, I made him this meal, and he slurped it all up and burped and pushed his plates aside. And I said, "Okay, John, now that we've had breakfast, let's talk about the movie and the script." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, I think I better wait till I see the director and the screenwriter." And I said, "I am the director and the screenwriter." I don't know who the hell he thought I was, but then I realized we were in for kind of an interesting ride. I think everybody's had a fantasy about being the only person on Earth. And it may be an adolescent fantasy about being able to do whatever you want. And on top of that was that kind of, the author's Yorkshire joke about somebody turning up in Auckland on a Sunday morning and there's nobody there, that was New Zealand. And the political and moral aspect of it, because it's kind of, it's a metaphor for nuclear Armageddon, post-apocalyptic world from now could be caused by, global warming. I don't know. When we finished it, we looked at it, we thought it was a dog. We all thought it was a piece of crap. It didn't work. We didn't think it was nearly good enough. Finished it, got it out there, couldn't sell it, nobody wanted to buy it, And all of a sudden, you know, somebody picked it up, and next thing you know, it was the best science fiction film of the 80s, and 7th highest grossing foreign film in America and stuff like that. So you never know with these things, you know. I wanted to make a metaphorical statement about no matter how grim your life is and how, you know, in the middle of the Depression, you've lost your parents, you're running away from home, the law is after you, the world that you're moving to is so exquisitely beautiful that it's worth the trouble. And that was kind of the thing I wanted to say in that movie. And I think I did actually do it quite well. I guess I felt by the time I made that movie, I knew what I was doing as a filmmaker enough to feel like I had control over the way we're shooting it, how I was dealing with the actors. And I actually loved the movie, and it did better in the States than it did in New Zealand, you know. In fact, it was released in Auckland at Academy Awards time, and it just got buried by these other big movies. I think it probably could have done better if it had been released in a smaller manner or at a different time. I just adore it. I think it's a beautiful film. I think it's like a little drop of water. It's sort of small but perfect in a way, you know. Not having lived in New Zealand for a while when I made the movie, I wasn't quite as aware as maybe I should have been that middle-class white New Zealanders were sick to death of this stuff, which may be why the movie didn't do better, although you know, it could be other reasons. I felt pretty much in support of the issue, and I thought it was a very interesting story, what I worked on with the script, and we may have never got it quite good enough. Or it may have just been that I don't know. It's funny. The reviews of it from screenings in the United States are extremely complimentary. I mean, fabulous reviews. And all the festival audiences I've showed it to say they understand it perfectly. And yet a lot of the feedback I got in New Zealand was they didn't understand what was going on. It's curious to read a review in Variety that goes about how, you know, how politically balanced the movie is and how reverential it is for the native New Zealanders and the land and all that, and then read a New Zealand review that's not very complimentary, but you know, that's life. Again, you make a movie, you put it out there, let me tell you, you know, they can throw anything at you. Jeff said New Zealand is the only country in the world where someone will bother to cross the road to tell you how much he hated your film, you know. I found it not very satisfying working as a film director in the US. I have never owned or had real complete control over the films that I've done. They've always been made for somebody else or for some investors or some institutional entity, and they've invariably done things or made me do things to the movie that I didn't like and didn't think were appropriate, usually with the justification that it'll make it more commercial, which has in fact never actually worked at all. They tend to like to deal with producers, and I think I've always said to the people that I know in those places, it's the writers and the directors that are actually the movie makers. And according to my son Ruben, who's a filmmaker here now, Peter Jackson recently made a very similar statement. You know, you can hire a producer, but the talent comes from the storytellers. It's about stories and storytelling, and that's what institutions like dealing, you know, bureaucrats like dealing with bureaucracy. So the New Zealand Film Commission and New Zealand On Air and TVNZ like to deal with producers who have offices and, you know, receptionists, but that's actually not what filmmaking's all about. So I would just say, you know, go with the storytellers, go with the stories, and you don't need to even know how to direct a movie to make a film if you put the right people around you. You know, it makes it. The crew likes it if you know what you're doing a lot more. I'll tell you that much. You know, but. I would just go for the stories and the passion. I love making films, and I love working under that kind of pressure, and I love the complexity and the dynamics, and I love the storytelling. I don't like the politics and the bullshit, and I'm not going to stop making films if I can make some more films the way I want to, but I'm sick of that other stuff, and I don't really, I'm not that impelled to pursue the institutional, political side of things. I have a vineyard and I make wine, and I own the company, and I'm in charge of what I do, and I can do whatever I like, and I like things that way. And that was kind of what it was like when I started out in New Zealand, and that was when it was the most fun, you know.